I took every drug known to man at the same time to stimulate every corner of my brain. And this is the result.
What's good, nerds? How's everybody doing? Welcome to the Movie Mess. I am your brother Jay, the Bishop of Bull Moose, the movie monk, the something of something, and I'm here. Talk about some nerdy shit today. I should probably take a sip of this first. It's still February, so I'm still drinking that black lager, y'all. You know it. I hope y'all are doing something nice to celebrate Black History Month. I'm making my contribution right here and now. Black lager. Always bet on black lager. And I'm here to talk about something a little different today, so I don't know how it's going to go. I'm a little bit sheepish to even bring this topic to you guys today, but I figure why not just dive in? I'm not supposed to be embarrassed by nothing, so. There actually seemed to be a pretty healthy little interest in weeb talk when I was recently on a stream with my man Jeff, John Doe Juggalo at John Doe Juggalo. My boy Jeff, excellent human being, by the way, I might add. But there was a little bit of interest in some of the anime-related talk that we were having. So I figured, why not start an anime-based discussion? I may be a little reticent to admit it, but I do have a modest, I will call it modest. It's not small per se, but it's definitely not large either. I'll call it modest anime and manga collection. And before we get too deep into this whole thing, can we just go back to calling it Japanimation like it's 1994 again? I much prefer Japanimation to anime. You don't even speak Japanese. Come on, man. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but boneless wings are just nuggets dipped in sauce. Squirt is just pee. And manga is just Japanese comic books. So you can just call it comic books. Like, I like reading comic books. It feels nerdier almost to say I like reading manga sometimes. I like reading comic books. Anyway, I think anime is a lot like other national cinemas or other genres of film. I mean, you might not be huge into Westerns, but I still think you'll agree that Shane is important cinema. You may not be big into sci-fi, but Blade Runner is still important. You might not be into dramatized biopics from the early 1940s, but Citizen Kane is still important. None of these three films might be your favorite films. None of these three are my favorite films. And yet, we still agree that they're important. There are films that are considered important pieces of cinema for their time or their genre or their ethnic or national origin. And yet, even if they're not our favorites, we can agree on kind of what's considered important, foundational, bedrock cinema, the things that are essential viewing. Even if they don't crack your top 10, that's okay. It's still kind of part of the enculturation of cinephilia. And so I think it goes with anime. I think that there is a vast amount of anime that exists. There are like many, many decades worth, 60, 70 years worth of anime out there and many different genres. And so, there's going to be a big range of offerings there. So, you might hear the word anime and think of shit like Sailor Moon or Naruto or something like that. And those things might seem kind of like juvenile and silly. You might have this mental image of anime that is kind of like juvenile, silly, maybe even cringeworthy. And, for Sailor Moon and Naruto, I mean, I'd have to agree with you. I'm a cisgendered, heteronormative, straight male in his 40s. I'm not watching any Sailor Moon, not even ironically. It's just not what I'm into. That's cool if it's your thing. It's not for me. So, I do agree that I'll even say most anime is not very cool. It's not something that you want to cop to, at least. That's like your guilty pleasure. But I think there are some gems that are important that have had an impact on global cinema, on films that maybe you do love. People like Quentin Tarantino were undoubtedly influenced by certain anime. So I think I think its place in global cinema is, at least for certain titles, is unquestionable, and you can't really argue against it. So I can't write anime off entirely, and there is anime that I enjoy. I enjoy talking about a subset of Japanimation and Japanese comics that I do like. It's mostly 80s and 90s shit. Shit like Akira, Ninja Scroll, the original Ninja Scroll, not the series, Ghost in the Shell, at least the original Ghost in the Shell from '96, Robotech. Robotech is cool. Urusei Yatsura, they shot themselves in the foot with that name, though. I'll talk about that later. Fist of the North Star, that shit is badass, dog. Kimagure Orange Road, how could I forget? City Hunter, City Hunter is my shit right there. Vampire Hunter D, that one's nostalgic as fuck. And I like Miyazaki stuff too. I'm not above watching some Spirited Away or some Howl's Moving Castle. My kids actually enjoy those too, so that to me is a lot of fun to be able to show them that. I can't get them to watch Akira. I'm not showing them Ninja Scroll. I ain't watching Ninja Scroll with a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, you know what I'm saying? Gotta wait till you're at least 8 to be watching some Ninja Scroll in this household. Anyway, so I like Miyazaki for kind of being family friendly, but not being complete shit. So I think I'm gonna take this first manga mass to indulge in a little walk down memory lane for myself. I'll regale you with my history of Japanimation and Japanese comic books. I'll get all fancy with them Japanese. I did study Japanese language in college. I got a minor in Japanese language and literature, so I'll tell you to go fuck yourself in Japanese. So I recall in my very early days watching Robotech as a kiddo, before I really had any understanding that it was originally a Japanese production. I really had no knowledge or understanding of like this came from Japan and this shit came from China and this shit came from the US. I was just too young to really care about any of those distinctions. But around the time I was like 13 or so, like 6th grade, I remember having a buddy and he was big into Japanimation. He kind of put me on that shit a little bit. I don't know, it would have been 1995 or thereabouts, like somewhere there as we were getting into the mid 90s. And I had been into American comic books up to this point, X-Men stuff, and that sort of led its way into Image comic stuff like Savage Dragon, and then that sort of led into Valiant stuff like Bloodshot and Ninjak and stuff. So I had kind of followed this progression into kind of more mature American comic books, and I very much liked reading American. I still have all my old comic books from the early 90s back upstairs. I got long boxes of American comic books as well because of the nostalgia factor. You know, every now and again I'll like blow the dust off of Wolverine or some shit and take a little jaunt through there. But anyway, this buddy of mine, circa 95, tells me, go check out Vampire Hunter D. You gotta go rent this movie. So I do. In 1995, I mean, checking out a movie, like you get a movie recommendation from your buddy or whatever, and it entailed like getting one of your parents to drive you to the Blockbuster. You had to rent a VHS. You had to bring that shit home. Maybe you had to rewind it. I don't know. That was like your Friday evening or your Saturday afternoon. You had to get them to go take you to acquire this thing. And it was in this way that I came to rent Vampire Hunter D. And for some of you younger folks out there, it might be hard to imagine a time where anime was not ubiquitous in US culture. You know, like my parents had no idea. They're like, you're renting a cartoon? You're 13, what are you doing? And in 1995, local video stores had like maybe half a dozen to 10 anime titles then. It wasn't a big deal. They had maybe 6 or 8 of the more popular titles, and that was it, one copy of each. Nowadays, you could be subbed to Crunchyroll, you could be subbed to Retro Crush. Retro Crush is badass. And you have like thousands of hours of anime just at your fingertips, just waiting for you to watch it whenever. But you get what you get and you don't get upset back then. Foreign import entertainment really just was not a big thing back then. There were very, very few movies that were foreign films that were available for import. Subtitles meant like artsy French shit from the 60s, not cartoon titties and dudes getting chopped up and cartoon blood fountains and shit and all that neon aesthetics and shit like that. But by the mid-90s, it was coming to mean that. So needless to say, I took one look at Vampire Hunter D and I was hooked, man. It had the anime titties, it had the blood fountains, it had the dudes cutting each other up, and it checked every box for me as far as I was concerned. I was hooked. You know, adult cartoons were not entirely unheard of in the West. Heavy Metal's probably the most famous example that springs to everyone's mind. Fritz the Cat is another fairly well-known example of animation that was intended for adults that clearly is not like family-friendly entertainment. And even still, even though there were a few kind of well-known examples, there wasn't a lot of Western cartoons for adult audiences. Mostly animation was like kid and or family shit. Like Japanimation was just what my adolescent ass needed. Like I said, it checked all the boxes. After Vampire Hunter D, I exhausted all of the anime at every video store within 20 miles. And I was also at the same time revisiting Robotech was in syndication on one of the stations. I don't know, one TBS or maybe it was even Cartoon Network by that point, but maybe not Cartoon Network just yet. This was still pretty early on in the Japanimation days, but I was finally able to rewatch Robotech with the understanding that this was, you know, a American localization of a couple of different unrelated anime television shows. And you know, this was back in the day when you were able to like copy VHS tapes. So I had two VHS. I think my parents like we went to a garage sale or something, had a cop another VHS. So we'd have two VHS players and I could hook them up and I could just, you know, you rent the anime from the Blockbuster and you would just copy it. So, you know, I hit up all the Blockbusters in the area and I was like copying all that anime over to my own bootleg VHSs. I didn't give a fuck because that's what I was doing. I was 14. I didn't have no money. Also, you know, I'd go into the comic book shops because I was into comic books. So that's when I started finding the Viz and the Dark Horse adaptations or translations of manga, of Japanese comic books. And so I was done with the X-Men shit after that. I was like, peace. I'm done with all that. You guys ever like read a bunch of manga and then go back and try to read an American comic book? That is some wordy shit. But at the time, you know, I was reading Fist of the North Star, Maison Koku, Urusei Yatsura, Battle Angel Alita, all that shit in like mid to late 90s. I kept that shit going all through high school. That was my jam. That was the shit I was reading during my downtime. As you can see from the stuff that I've just told you that I like, earlier I listed off a list of anime that I like. That's my current tastes were very much formed at that time. My current tastes have not diverted very much from my tastes in the mid-90s. Now in the early 2000s, I'm in college, and I had gone on to read stuff like GTO and Chobits, stuff that was coming out from Tokyo Pop at the time. And I must say that mid-aughts manga was not really doing as much for me as those earlier, the 90s manga, the stuff that I was reading maybe about 8 or 10 years earlier. And, you know, as a starving college student by then, I just had less money to buy anime. Long series of like 100 episodes. They stretched over like 50 VHS tapes. I remember when Maison Koku finally, the anime started coming out from Viz, they were putting 2 episodes per VHS tape. Each VHS tape was like 25 or 30 bucks. So it's 100 episodes in that series, 96 episodes. They're gonna have to do 48 VHS tapes. You do the math, multiply that by 25 bucks per VHS, and it was untenable. It was untenable to do that. DVD came out, it made it a little bit better because now you can get 4 episodes per disc instead of just 2 per VHS, and you could get multiple discs in the same amount of physical space, but even still, it was a lot of money. It was a lot of money to acquire one of these longer series. It wasn't just a single movie that you could get. Crunchyroll, Retro Crush, they didn't exist yet. So streaming wasn't an option. Streaming is a great solution for very long television shows that you don't want to spend money on. When you don't want to spend $1,000 on a long-ass television series, Crunchyroll is great. Furthermore, being a weeb does not exactly help you with women either. Even the women that go to Dragon Con and like cosplay and shit, They weren't even into your ass if you were a weeb. Being into anime doesn't even help you with the girls that are also into anime. Costs a lot of money, keeps your penis dry. That equals find a new hobby, dog. So it went with anime for me at that time. I really kind of pulled out of it a lot. I still had a few anime on DVD, like the Fist of the North Star movie, and I kept that small collection alive, but it wasn't the type of thing that I was like proudly wearing on my shirt sleeve anymore. I was in the film theory undergrad program at UGA also at the time, so I was exploring a lot of different eras and like foreign film industries and stuff like that at the time, other national film industries. So I was really expanding a lot of like what I would watch in terms of live action cinema as well, and there was just no lack of options of stuff to watch. I was moving, my tastes were moving in other directions. I was developing a taste for other new things. And with just a few exceptions, I didn't return to anime and manga until the pandemic in 2020 or so is when I picked up a few volumes of manga. I was getting bored at home, just working from home. I picked up a few volumes of manga that had been recently translated. It was actually the Kimagure Orange Road manga I never thought would see any kind of professional release in the US, and it did. It got a physical release, and I was all too happy to snap those up. That was one of my favorite series of all time. So I did eventually get pulled back in a little bit to some degree. I would still call myself more of a live action cinema guy, but I do have a little bit of nostalgic love for some of the older anime. Like I said, I'm looking for that real 80s vibe, that early 90s vibe from my anime. There's not a lot of the new stuff that I like. I really just mess with the stuff that I grew up with. So like in a future Manga Mass video, I will recommend some more recent series that I actually do like. There's a few. So like these videos aren't just like a 80s anime circle jerk. I'll try to recommend and discuss some more modern stuff that I've checked out, whether I like it or not. I'll try to tell you about the more modern stuff that I've looked at, although that stuff is pretty few and far between. And I'll try to do these videos, these Manga Mass videos, like a couple times a month. Talk about different anime and manga, maybe make some recommendations, definitely talk some nostalgia and shit. And in the meantime, I'm gonna thank these weebs right here. Way to keep it down, way to not get any pussy at Dragon Con. I mean, there's no sex in the champagne room, and there's even less at Dragon Con. It's pretty bad. I'm just kidding. I'm sure some people have sex there. I just never did. Oh well, tried a few times. What can I tell you? I didn't have the animal magnetism that I currently do. Anyway, thanks to these people for making it all possible. Thanks to you for watching the video. Deuces to you. I'm gonna drink this thing, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace, suckers.
You are physically repulsive, intellectually retarded, you're morally reprehensible, vulgar, insensitive, selfish, stupid. You have no taste, a lousy sense of humor, and you smell.
Damn, I got a headache.